do you think? Mariah sent it out yet. I think it was yesterday. Correct? It was yesterday. Mm-hmm. Does anyone need it to review now? Yeah. So Mariah, if you don't mind sending those again by email, and we will move that agenda item till about a half an hour from now. Unless, what do you think, Mariah? Should we read them now and give everyone a chance to read them, or do you think push it forward so folks have a chance to read them?
I believe we need to vote on them during this session, but I'm open to the feedback of the council of like how much time they would like to review it. I'm gonna look to resend them, so it's just gonna take me a moment to find the email and forward it again.
All right, yeah. So would anyone like to motion to move the agenda item of adoption of the minutes forward to 6:45?
I motion to move the revisit to 6:45.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all right. So here again, kind of to do the all in favor or voting, I'll just call everyone by name and you'll vote. So Sholanda.
Yes, aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Tambila.
Aye.
And Brandon. Excellent, wonderful. So motion passes to rearrange our agenda. Mariah's going to resend those minutes out, and we will revisit this in about a half an hour. So then moving on our agenda, we have here, we've got from our old business, one of our council members, Jacqueline Ramsey, has asked us to just, I think, begin a conversation about the numerous food deserts in various parts of our city. I think in some of this is from her experience on the council. We have tended to focus, I think, more on a couple rather than many. And so she's, I thought she was going to be able to join the meeting this evening. Maybe she'll join in a little bit. But that's really an agenda item initiated by Councilmember Ramsey. So in that regard, I think when we briefly touched on it, I've sent out some of the food access reports that the city has put together, some of the maps we have on where those, I think it depends who you look at, who's counting, but it's usually right around a little over 20 different areas of that are kind of defined as a food desert. But other than that, without Councilmember Ramsey, I'm not exactly sure on what she wants to talk about in that topic regard. Does anyone have anything they'd like to discuss on that topic?
You said which topic?
So our first agenda item is an old business item carried forward from the last few meetings that Council Member Jacqueline Ramsey has asked us to put on the agenda. And basically what she's kind of, the context in which she has discussed it is that she wants to talk about solutions for other food deserts. That we have over 20 in total in Winston-Salem. And during her time on the council for about 2 years, we've worked primarily only in one of those food deserts. And so there, I think, she had been interested in a list of the other food deserts. I sent her that through a few maps that the city has, as well as that food access report. And then she basically said, some of her ideas were around working with farmers to get fruits and vegetables in those places to try to sell them, increase market access for farmers, but also food access, improve in Winston-Salem overall. Again, I only have the context in which she shared wanting us to put it on the agenda.
Now, as far as putting it on the agenda, what is her desired outcome? Is it are we to do an assessment? Is it just a mere discussion, or is it a action? Are we the compilation of some type of action plan? What is the objective?
I basically read you the exact message, right? Which was, where are the other food deserts? And so from there, I was able to directly answer her question with some maps the city has, as well as food access reports. Should anyone else in the council want that information as well, I can send that out. And then she later goes on to say that she wants, so to me, Brandon, it seems more action oriented. From her perspective, we've focused primarily in one or two of the over 20 food deserts. Do we have plans, or can we begin to work in some of the other food deserts? And then she pitched a couple ideas that were related to farmers being able to sell fruits and vegetables in those areas. That was the one idea she had, but I think more broadly it was.
Now let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you finished with your statement? I wasn't.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Now, with that being said, let me ask you a question, just sidebar, coming back and still pertinent to what we discussed. Now, when we're looking at the food deserts, and I've seen the map that you're referencing. Is there a classification of the severity or risk levels of identified food deserts? As far as, high risk, moderate risk, low risk, in terms of severity? And if so, would it behoove us to develop a plan based upon the needs assessments in terms of, as far as severity? Is that something that's already identified in terms of those categories? And two, in terms of type of action plan, do we have the capacity to, address those deficiencies ourselves as a council, based upon what she says or what she has suggested? I don't know what it is in terms of, making this a goal.
Sorry, I've got a lot of exciting background noise going on here. I'm going to try to mute it. But so to answer your question, Brandon, my understanding is that on the USDA's Economic Research Service has a map, and I can I can put that in our chat. But that map, as I'm looking at it, and again, I'm just kind of looking at it right now, seems to have some level of severity. I think typically the way I have seen it more as like, yes or no, does it meet the criteria? Michael, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm not interrupting those.
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I was interested in what you were saying about the map, but I was just gonna add on, like, I know at the last farmers market, I've spoken with Mariah. She said she will be building with Tiffany White coming up soon, and I just want to once again implement this conversation with the water access, because we just did the tour in High Point. I mean, that's not exactly parallel, but we just did a tour in High Point, and I see how the urban farmers are working to address their disparities, hands-on, feet, boots to the ground, and the High Point governance has kind of met them halfway, and foundations have came in and filled in the gap. So we got all the pieces in place to do the same thing here. We actually started in the same year, 2015, with this initiative. They've just had more agreement on their part across the those sectors. So I'd be interested in get back into this water access conversation because, you know, for our urban farm or the urban agricultural ordinance to have been in place since 2015, and us only having 3 certified urban farms, that's kind of poor, and that shows a lot with you know what needs movement in the city. And I think lastly, I would say, you know, food deserts are they are put in place because of policies that are inequitable. So I think us addressing the inequitable policies overall, that might kind of like that might get to some of these communities that are suffering the most.
Yeah, so I think this really connects with page 2 in our minutes from March, when we had a similar conversation, right? And so I think there, because I reread these recently, what's our thought in either some of us as members of the council trying to meet with Desmond Corley, the land use coordinator, or inviting Desmond Corley, am I pronouncing that right? To one of our meetings. I think there Mariah had shared this person with us in terms of kind of about the permit process for pursuing the urban agriculture permits. And so there, you know, I would like to follow up on that and see from the council which we prefer. You know, do we prefer to try to invite him to one of our council meetings to talk us through what is that process like? And from there, we can evaluate, why are there only 3 approved? Is it something about the process to get the permit? Kind of like what we saw with the vacant lot program, right? That process wasn't really feasible and was the holdup problem. Is it something that's kind of out of reach, right? Doesn't meet the cost benefit. And that was kind of what we did on the policy analysis with the chicken, pigeons, and fowls. So that would be my first thought to the council is what do we think about following up with Desmond Corley?
I don't mind meeting with them. I think it'd be more value if we were to meet him outside of this convene model. I think it'll generate more outcomes versus just inviting them to a conversation. Because like Banner was saying, we've been talking for a while. And I think if we were to meet, you know, that can I think it'll kind of spearhead the process.
Okay, great.
So if I can jump in, I will say that, and I think Michael sort of touched on this because I had shared this with him recently. Desmond Corley may be a good person to still communicate with, but in fact, there is a woman who works in our planning department. Her name is Tiffany White, who is sort of more the spearhead on in particular for the agricultural ordinances. So my recommendation would be to maybe really reach out to her if that is the more specific point of discussion about like agriculture, not just land use generally, but in particular. And I will share as well that our planning department is in the process of doing an evaluation related to the chicken ordinance and the livestock ordinance in particular. There was in the general committee that was presented on, I think, a few weeks ago, like sometime in May. Someone from the planning department, it wasn't Tiffany, but it was one of her peers, presented to city council essentially what our current chicken ordinance laws are, and then what are like our peer city chicken ordinances or livestock ordinances. And essentially what they found was that ours are much more restrictive and have a lot more problems that lead to less feasibility for folks to be able to implement keeping chickens in there, or not just chickens, it's a livestock ordinance, because technically I think it applies to if you want to keep bunnies or other animals as well. And so they are currently working on updating that. But when I met with Tiffany, what she shared is that they're not looking to update the agricultural ordinance currently, but every about 15 or so years, the city does come out with a new strategic vision. The last one was like the Legacy 2030. I believe in the next few years, they're going to be working on the next set of planning, essentially is what it is. And at that point, that might be an opportunity to evaluate our agricultural ordinance and have some opportunities to update that as well. But Tiffany White in particular seems very open to conversation, as that she does not work in permitting, she works in planning. So she's not the one that's actually overseeing the daily use of these programs, but she is the person who helps sort of creates the specific legalese language of how it's actually organized and designed.
Yeah, so I think I put that department's link in our chat. And so if you click that last link I sent, that'll pull up the planning and design staff, and Tiffany White is listed there at the end. So I think Brandon said he was interested in meeting with her. Are there other council members who would like to be part of trying to schedule that meeting?
Yeah, I would like to be included.
Me too. I would too.
Okay, so I've got Michael, Brandon, Shalonda. Is that something that, Mariah, that you would want to be also present for?
I am happy to be. It's not necessary for me to necessarily be if it's not the function of this committee. If you just as citizens or residents are choosing to reach out to someone that works in the city, you don't have to include me. Now, if it were to become the business of this council or the business of a subcommittee of this council, then it is necessary for me to be included in those meetings and then emails that relate to that.
I would say it's probably closer to the latter if it's something our council is looking into. And let's say there's at least 3 out of the count of our council members. I think it is council business. And so I think typically the person in your role has gone with us.
Yeah, then I'm happy to do it. It's just as a clarifying point. So that's not an issue for me to be involved. I'm happy to do so if it's the official business of this council.
All right. And so in the past there, and thank you, Mariah, it has been more the liaison that would schedule the meeting. There's no clean way to help everyone's calendars. I'm happy to try to set that meeting up if that doesn't feel like the right fit for you.
I don't mind. I can do it.
Because also, again, I think if we have 3 of our council members going, I'm not sure we necessarily need a 4th, right? I think that would be a great representation of the council. And so it may not make sense at all for me to try to schedule a meeting I won't be at and 4 other calendars that I don't know. So yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, wonderful. So I think from there, just in terms of connecting with Michael's comments and stuff like that is our kind of next action step towards evaluating the urban agriculture program and also understanding more why do we so far only have 3 approved farms. That our next step is to set up a meeting with Tiffany White, with Mariah, our city liaison, and 3 council members, Michael, Brandon, and Shalonda. I also saw that if you prefer Christopher, because I recognize you keep introducing yourself as Christopher too, and so I apologize for that. I think in the chat, he had asked, do we know, Michael, the name of the 3 farms? The 3 approved farms?
So what about it now?
Well, I think
like I said,
Chris, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say those are really my guesses. I'm not sure about those.
I'd also like to follow up if we find out with those 3 approved. I'm not familiar as a relatively new member what that process is for being approved as an urban farm. If anyone could drop a link or provide information, I'd like to know that.
Yeah, you can find that on the city's website, but I'm happy to drop a link to the specific area. It just walks you through what it takes to get permitted. And to be quite honest, when I was talking about it with Tiffany, that doesn't mean that there are only 3 agricultural sites in Winston-Salem. You know, there are a lot of people who have gardens that don't consider it agricultural. So that doesn't necessarily imply like a lack of people doing it. It just shows that there's a lack of people working with the city to get permitted to do it. Same thing goes with chickens, by the way.
Right. I just want to know if it's approved, then there's a process. Right. And I'd like to understand that process and why one would want to seek to do that process.
Yeah, so I think that is the link. And I think that, Christopher, is something that our council does really well. You know, if you think about that kind of food policy council by literal name, is that, you know, for us to take a look at an existing policy related to urban food aspects and say, are there ways that this can be improved? Are there ways we can understand why? And Mariah used a great example, the chickens, right? I know tons of people who have chickens and they have no need per se, in their opinion, to get the permit. Part of that is, you know, when you look at that permit requirements, I'm not sure people who raised backyard birds designed the policy. Because, you know, I've seen smaller granny flats than some of those requirements for the chicken coop and things like that, you know. And so if you're not necessarily kind of directly involved in it, you don't always know what those barriers are or designs of a policy that make it inefficient. And so I think we can definitely do that, right? Mariah, was that the link, the application and information for it?
Yeah, that is correct. The urban ag page under planning.
And then from there, Christopher, and to answer this question, we have been able to get a list of the permits. Typically, we'll get addresses and have to acknowledge confidentiality, but we have before, through the permit office, gotten a list of who has the permit. So we could explore that if we're interested to know by count how many of these have been issued and where are they. So we can kind of think about that if we're interested and explore that. And I think Brandon's had his hand up for a while.
I kind of forgot. You see what I'm saying? I had to add a value added comment, but I kind of got lost in it with the chickens and this and that. I was trying to add I was going to speak to an alternative to addressing some of the food desert concerns, and it has something to do with the identified 3 farms. But I kind of forgot what I was going to say. So I digress.
Sorry about that if I didn't get to you soon enough. If it comes back, let me know or just unmute. So from there, are we interested in exploring pulling those permits, asking for the data on the count of the number of urban agriculture permits that have been issued? And then similar to the chickens, what we were able to do was kind of map it out and see here's where they are in town, here's over time when those permits have been requested, and get a bit better of an understanding of some of the features of it.
Well, I mean, I most certainly would. I want to familiarize myself with the policy and what it entails and what it lacks, right? If there is such a lack or a need, like you were saying about the chickens, why, you know, would someone say, well, I don't need a permit, right? Do you know, and what access do you have, blah, 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 etc. So I don't know, like I'm completely novice to this policy. So I would be interested in looking at data and what it says and what those permits entail and Is it something that, and this is where I would lean on the wisdom of the other council members that have been here for a while that could tap into that sort of knowledge. Would it bridge any sort of gap by reviewing that policy? And I don't know.
I mean, I have found that to be helpful in understanding or making recommendations about improving policies, right? So for example, just to kind of use the chicken one again, totally biased because I was the one that kind of did it. I found it helpful to see there was a very specific ward that had most of the permits. And knowing that the city council, now Mayor Pro Tem Adams, when she really, nudged this to happen, what was around food insecurity. Let's put protein on the plate. That was her kind of direct quote. Let's improve access to folks having protein on the plate by improving access to them producing it themselves. And yet we were able to very clearly map where these, at the time, 16 permits were not in low access or food desert areas, right? So for me, I found that helpful. Mariah, do you know, would it be, so I think back then, and this was like 3 years ago, I worked with Bruce Bailiff, Ken Millett, and Donna Beck. I feel Donna's not there anymore.
Donna is not with the city anymore. Ken Millett is. He's in our business and inclusion department. I'm not sure about the other individual. Are you asking to also include them in this meeting? Is that what you're?
Nope, this would be totally separate.
Okay.
This would be totally separate. So I think at the time, Bruce Bailiff was the code enforcement project supervisor. And again, it was requesting some of the information about who had permits and or if any of these permits were rescinded in terms of code enforcement, right?
Yeah, Mariah has access to that. She's the lady, the food person at the city. Doesn't she have access to that data? We can look at it and determine how many people have permits and where they are. Mariah doesn't have access to that.
Are you asking me if I have access to the planning department's permits? Not immediately. I can ask for it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And what farms, be able to identify whatever farms have been, established or who met the requirements of being granted those opportunities. Do we have that? Do you have some type of database where we can have access to those identified farmers?
I mean, this is a separate department for me, so I'm just as capable as, I can ask them for it, but this is not just part of my job where I have a database of just permits.
Do you have tonight? I'm just saying, I'm just trying to solve the problem. And I kind of got, when we were talking about, I kind of got off what we were kind of discussing. Like, do we have access? How do we need to get access to this data?
You would need to talk to the planning department who manages the permit process.
Yeah, so I can either do it, or I'm going to open the floor and see if any of the rest of the council members want to do it. When we did it with the chicken one, I was the one that reached out by email, and I think eventually Regina said, yes, she's on the Urban Food Policy Council. They're trying to get this information for the work of the council, but I was the one that had initiated the request. And so I just sent that department's link. I'm not sure exactly who is the person, but that's the permit office staff. So we would begin by asking, and again, in the past, this has come from us as council members by email. I had sent a request, here's the work we're doing. I had CC'd at the time, it was Regina. I CC'd our liaison and explained the permits we were interested in having data on, and they provided the data directly to me.
And just for brevity, we're gonna have to go through that process. It ain't nothing anybody's gonna be able to pull up right now with that information, because we done had so many different people that went to those departments trying to get that information, and they don't even have it figured out. So it's good that y'all bringing it up, because we're gonna have to go start all the way over, basically from scratch, whether the city know it or not, and rehash this whole conversation. Now I know they're saying they're not going to touch it probably until the strategic year come up or whatever, but we need to really see where these disparities exist inside of this ordinance.
And
So they
can
try
I,
to fix that.
So if you saying they say they're not going to touch it, is it even worth moving in that direction if it's not going to be received or if it's not going to be met with the same
What?
type of momentum?
Okay, I'm
Well-
gonna say this. I'm gonna say this real quick. Now, I'm speaking for myself. What it's going to take from our council is going to take a real solid commitment if we ever expect to make any changes in Winston-Salem. So
Okay.
anytime, any type of way we're coming in confused and don't understand like what our powers is, we all
Right.
on the council for a reason.
Right.
I don't take no's from the city. They work for us. So it's cool. Like, you know, Mariah, she doing her best because she's in that position. You know what I mean? I'm sure she was in the grassroots perspective or grassroots position like us, she'll be liberated to say things that she would like to say. But she holding her position. But our position is to test the city. So I'm not worried about what they're saying in any type of plan. I know that the more our council gets solid and start moving with some type of consensus and purpose, that's what's gonna make things happen for the city. That's how I see it.
Now let me ask you a question. Do you have how do you think we should go about gaining access to this information so we can
Well-
assess it and see how we need to go about resolving the problem?
Yeah,
Okay.
so my recommendation is we contact one of the people in the permit office.
Okay.
And it
Can I
Do we
also-
have a person? Do we have
May-
a contact person, a name that we can contact so we can put that on the
if I can recommend,
please.
I would say that the best way to move forward on this is to talk to Tiffany White. She is the person responsible for helping to write these ordinances. She would be able to tell you who in permitting would be a better contact rather than us just trying to figure it out, because she
All right,
knows
do
that
we have
department
Tiffany
better
White
than
contact?
us. Tiffany White is also the person to talk to about what you would like to see the agricultural ordinance look like and how you'd like it changed. Just because they're not changing it this year doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it this year. It takes years of, they're in what you call the strategic planning phase. So in the next 2 years, they're meeting with stakeholders, such as members of this council would make sense as one of their stakeholders to weigh in on something like an urban agricultural ordinance, to take feedback and to find ways to incorporate how to make updates to these types of ordinances. So they're changing the chicken ordinance now because there are problems with it. Like they get a lot of complaints. And so that's why there's immediate action happening. But I think it's not like forever in the future. Like it's within the next couple of years that they're planning to make updates to both of these ordinances in general. So I would recommend, again, starting with Tiffany White, because she has clearly said to me, I am a point of contact. I'm happy to meet and talk to people about agriculture within Winston-Salem and as they pertain to these ordinances. And she would also be able to tell you who in the permitting office might be the go-to to talk about the permitting side of these ordinances.
Well, is it Megan, am I at liberty to see if we can develop some type of task force to kind of create or arrange a meeting with Tiffany White so we can kind of see?
Yes, yeah. So I think that was what we were talking about right before we talked about the number of issued permits, if we were interested in that data. And Mariah had said she was willing to reach out to try to schedule that meeting. And yourself and Michael and Shalonda said that they were interested as council members in attending that meeting.
But that was the same person. Okay.
Yep. So I think just in the spirit of time and all that, as you noticed in the chat, I would like to call for the adoption of the minutes, since it's a few minutes past when we said we would do that. So are there any revisions, comments, or edits to our minutes as received for March? Okay, would anyone like to call to adopt the minutes as received?
We can adopt them as received.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to adopt the minutes from March 2022 as received. Is there a second? I'm not trying to be problematic, but I don't think as chair, I'm allowed to motion or second.
I motion to second it. Second.
Okay, so Shalonda seconds. So here we'll just kind of go around and vote yay or nay on the motion to approve the minutes for March 2022 as received. Megan, yay. Shalonda,
Yay.
Christopher,
Yay.
Michael,
Yay.
Tambila,
Yay.
and Brandon.
No.
Okay, the motion still passes with more than 50%. But Brandon, did you want to open the floor to discuss any edits or concerns with the minutes from March?
No, I'm saying no. No, I'm in transit, so I hadn't had opportunity to review the plan, so I don't want to just say yes, just to say it.
Okay, all right, yeah, understood.
I'm gonna do a service. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I appreciate honesty. It still passed with the
I get it.
All right, so from there, I think we got some great action items, which is Mariah shared Tiffany's contact information, but Mariah is also going to help us set up a meeting with 3 council members with Tiffany White as our first step. I will circle back next month and see if folks might still be interested in me looking at asking for the count of the permits, just for more information. It's a separate office, but should we want to know how many are where? And we don't have to want to know, but again, when I've done that in the past, it's been an email request and a spreadsheet sent.
I got a quick question. So you say you're going to motion that you're going for next month, we were talking about actually digging into the policy and accessing that data. Is that not something we can do to sort of move forward? Because I know Mr. Banner was talking about that. We feel like with this idea of analyzing that policy and that data, it's we're starting from scratch. I wasn't part of the council then, so I don't know what exactly was analyzed, how it was reviewed, and what policy was put forth, right? I'm sort of with you on this notion that this is a policy council, right? So it would make sense to start to really analyze that, to push, to make changes.
I certainly can. I think there I was kind of leaning towards honoring Mariah's recommendation of kind of perhaps the first step is meet with Tiffany, who's kind of spearheading the changes to the urban agriculture program.
Probably she's the same person, right? So the meeting could it not be dual,
yeah, so
or should
Tiffany
it be
not in the permits office, right? So like the permits office before, I've sent a very direct email, right?
Right.
I'm on the Urban Food Policy Council. We're doing an analysis. I'm interested in the number of special use permits from the 2012 chicken and pigeon and fowl policy that the city has issued, right? It was a very direct question, it just gives us data on how many and possibly with addresses where. Tiffany White is the person who is leading changing the current urban agriculture permit program. And so I think they're the recommendation in terms of being an important stakeholder to inform what those improvements and changes should be. Mariah was saying that meeting with her was a good first step, and that perhaps she would know exactly who at the permitting office to ask. So all I can do is pull up the permitting office and say, there's 4 people we could try emailing. I don't know which one.
And by all means, though, you can try to email the permits office too. I'm not familiar with their staff, but Tiffany can give us a direct name. But if you also just want to email them with that request, you can do so. They might. Yeah,
and so if you're interested in that, I'm happy to do that. Because again, it's just a very 3 to 4 sentence email request, or we can wait. So there, I'll kind of get some feedback of what the council might prefer.
I say send the email if you don't mind, if you have time.
Yep, I don't mind. Shalonda, I think your hand's up.
Yes, I have a question. So when we were talking about focusing on the 20 food deserts, does that is there like, should we right now, like currently think of solutions, or like just to have something prepared so that we're just not, so that we're not waiting for the conversation with Tiffany? Or is it okay for us to brainstorm on some solutions? Or is the water access the priority to think about before we even go? Like, what's the priority before our next meeting? The food deserts, the over 20 food deserts, the water access, or the policies? I think there was 3 things that I've heard.
So I think for the whole council, what would be important is to review the urban agriculture program. I know I've sent a bunch of links. That's one of the links in the chat. Let's all read it, and then we can discuss kind of what the city's program looks like and give our thoughts. In terms of the agenda item on the food deserts, that was a request of a council member who's not here. And so I'm not exactly sure how to attend to that, other than
I still think it's valid though. Like it's 20 areas, like that's very valid to address, I would think. So how do we keep that conversation going as like a priority? I think, I never met her, but I think it's a very important topic to still keep on the agenda, whether she's here or not.
So in that sense, would you like to roll it forward to next month?
Yes.
In a way, so I'm happy to roll that forward and put it on an agenda item. And if in between, that's an area that you want to explore pitching some ideas to the council, then I welcome putting your name next to that on the agenda, right? Because I think we all agree. But we are where we get our action items from too. So
right.
Yeah.
And if and you can put mine on there with hers. I'm not trying to take away her voice at all, but I would like to join her in that work.
Yeah. I will definitely reach out and let her know. I think she said, I want to see the council do work in more of the food deserts, right? And I had reached out to her in between meetings saying, we've got a new council member who does work in Boston Thurman, because I know that she lives in Boston Thurman, and that's an area that she does work in as well. And she was pretty excited about that. So I think it would be a great connection. So I can list both of your names, but I think we welcome those ideas and bringing us some kind of, thoughts or action areas that you see. Lastly, I'll say, in following up from the water topic, where I see that is when we meet with Tiffany, we have recommendations of where we can bring that water access into the revisions of the urban agriculture program, right? We know that is a limiting factor. We don't yet know how to fix it. I don't know that we can 100% fix it. But is this an opportunity in a big policy they're revising to be sure that that is a priority in the revisions? That's my thought, but I'd like to hear what other folks think.
I've got a question. Like, when it comes to the recommendation for water access priorities, is there a place that like I can look to see where the water access is not to look at that? Or I just don't, or there's the information only comes from Tiffany?
No, it does not just come from Tiffany. There is a map that I have and I can send to you, Shalonda. And I think this was produced by the Extension Office that shows where there's current water access. So from that, you can infer where there is not access. However, I don't believe that there is a concise way that it's been documented that ABC gardens or farms or agricultural sites within Winston-Salem that are suffering because they don't have water access. Like, I have heard of sites. I know Michael Banner has heard of sites. I'm sure other members of our council might know just circumstantially of sites, but there's not just like a go-to list of that information from what I understand.
Feet's on the ground, I guess. I'm happy to check it out and see what's going on too. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think also, not that it's as exciting as watching other things on streaming, but our previous meetings are on the city's YouTube channel. And so we've had a few meetings, particularly where Mr. Johnny Taylor, the assistant city manager, has joined us in talking about it, and that may shed some of the history on it, where there were certain aspects of water access that the city had not realized were inconsistent with state regulations. And I think that led to some disappointment when certain ways of being able to improve water access in the city were unable to come to fruition or stopped because of state regulations, right? And it was an oversight, but I think it led to some disappointment. And so for example, there's a regulation that's a state regulation about a backflow regulator, which sounds like a big word, but really it's a big price tag. But it's a state regulation that basically says the water can't go back in the system. Michael?
What'd you say his name was again? Johnny what?
Johnny Taylor, assistant city manager.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to follow up on that too. I'm very glad you're making that an emphasized point, because I did talk to Johnny Taylor it's probably a month ago. He came to the farmers market, and he gave us some lip service about yes, your cries have been heard. We will be implementing water. And myself, I definitely feel it the most. You know what I'm saying? It's urgent in our community, because we got whole sites that are not even being used because it's just too laborious to have to carry water to it. And that's pitiful. So the city has I'm paying attention. They're allocating money for cleaning up to filling in some bike trail to make sure that it doesn't flood. And it's just a lot of money going out here and there, but people are still starving. And if we don't kind of nip this in the bud now, then I fear that our city is going to be like the big cities where you see Skid Row. I mean, they're already going to be pushing them out of the projects. We don't have any type of resiliency in our city. And Johnny Taylor, I know he's going to watch this, or he might be on here now. I really hope, I don't even use the word hope, you know what I'm saying? I really trust that he honors his word. And I really trust that his word extends into the communities, like I said, that feel it the most. Because a lot of times we start these initiatives, then they start hitting other communities, and we never see that light of day. And this is not exaggeration. This happened so many times. So I'm on public record saying, please, let's follow up on this water access. They're trying to brush it aside like it's nothing significant. They're trying to make every excuse, talking about how much money it costs, but they got plenty of money in their coffers that could pay for this, even if they just take 10 sites and invest back into our communities and let the people know that you care about them doing for themselves. It will make a great impact in our community. So yes, please.
I think Megan has stepped away, but I'm going to be sending here a follow-up as well. So just keep an eye out for it with the water resource map, and as well as a memo. And I know that members of this council have seen it before, but I know, Shalonda, you're new. And so just to keep you in the loop, there was at one point an evaluation of assisting gardens or sites that needed water access. And as Megan sort of explained, it involves developing infrastructure like the backflow mechanism and putting in a meter and digging for pipes, etc. And so the city essentially evaluated how much it would cost to do that on average. And this memo sort of dictates that process. How much it cost was pretty prohibitive. It was something like $8,000 on average. And so the city in this memo said, and this is also before my time, this is from my predecessor who was in this role. The memo essentially says that at the time of it coming out, that the city can't commit to doing that in perpetuity because that's prohibitive costs. And if you do it for some, you have to do it for all. And that's just a large financial commitment. That was sort of the last official thing the city has said on that matter. So, I mean, again, I think when you meet with Tiffany White, like you have said, Michael, like this, bring these questions to her and ask about how can this be adopted in our agricultural ordinance? And, just, I think it's important to continue that as a conversation, but I will be sending that memo out as well with the water resource map so that you can just see sort of some of the history of what has been developed on this as well.
I do think that it'd be a good idea before myself, Michael, and Shalandra meet, that we do have a list of questions, compile a list so we can make sure that we're getting all our questions answered. Because we're from the east side. I mean, it's a little different. I mean, I understand the sense of urgency. It's a little different when you're from the outside looking in. But when you're from the inside looking around, then it's a totally different. Time is not really, we can't take a wait and see approach. So I think that it'd be good, it would behoove us to make sure that we have everything, all of our articles, everything in place, all our questioning. So as soon as we get that information, we can work steadfast on developing a step function action plan to go ahead and solve this food desert problem. Because it's been going on long enough. And we had the acumen to go ahead and start putting some resolutions into place without having to wait on people who, only care about it when it's Thursday. And I digress.
I would be interested in seeing that more because I wasn't on the council of those, what work has gone into that before. And how it can be better to speed up what Brandon and Michael are speaking to, the urgency, the sense of urgency. I absolutely agree with when you're on the inside looking in and around, the perspective is massively different than those looking on the outside. And also Michael put in the comments about, which sparked in curiosity to me, it wouldn't be in perpetuity, it would be an infrastructure, right? And to me, that's narrowing down where these water lines and infrastructure could be installed as a goodwill gesture. You said something about $8,000 last time. That seems like an insignificant amount of money to me. But then again, I didn't analyze any of that data, so I don't know. But if it's infrastructure, if it can be a goodwill gesture, if it's something we can look at, and I don't know if the council last time decided what that looked like as far as like what gardens should have access to water, which ones could get this infrastructure, what that looks like price wise, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that, but it just seems like it shouldn't be complicated. But I know anytime you work with the government and policy, it gets muddy, but I would be interested in looking at that once you send that out more on to see how can this process be sped up.
I agree. And I think it'll be good to have you a part. I know you spoke to her earlier to be a part of that review, committee, so we can look at the plan, the formal plan, what's working, what's not working, what it is that we want, and be able to push that. Because so I agree with what you're saying. I think it would, be good to kind of review and get things going. Now we've been talking about this for 5-6 years. I haven't, but I'm trying to get something done.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's hear the next steps. What do you think, Brandon, is the action? It's each of us to take the leadership. So, what do you think that next action is?
Okay. Once we meet with White, the young lady, I think we need to exhaust all of our resources. And when you're looking at the food desert, like I said, like the young lady, like Shalandra said, and we need to look at identify these areas, review it, because everybody may not have seen the list. We need to look at who is it the highest or has the most critical need, and then we need to look at what the resources are and look at how to bridge that gap. And I'm saying, I know it sounds simple, but for example, if you're going to eat, for instance, a lot of these little tables, a lot of churches, nonprofits, all these people getting this money, and the people going around got canned goods. I did a workshop, and I'm gonna say it. I did a workshop. They had the good food on the inside and had the canned goods on the outside. My point is this: psychologically, that's heavy. But my thing is, if you have these little people who getting this ARPA money and all these grants to start providing a healthy selection of food, food education courses, all these churches giving out that stale bread and all that old stuff. Let's encourage them to give out healthy food. I fed 100 families by myself last month. So it ain't no excuse. I mean, I don't get no money from nobody. So my thing is, if we can it's not always about just selling to the people, but even the food that they giving away is not worth nothing. So my thing is, let's look at that also. Let's look at it from a comprehensive standpoint. And if the people who getting the money, who provide this food, are uneducated, don't know about how to modify selling or distributing deleterious food to the body and the mind, we need to start there, because there's a lot of people who walk around and get that food. You go to certain places where, YMCA, they put food on the tables. You go to different churches, they put food here. So my thing is, the quality of that needs to be improved, because these little areas sprinkled in between these food deserts are accessible or access points to some people who can't go out. So we need to kind of look at all the avenues versus just having a linear focus on the urban market being the panacea. Because you're seeing how that's working. So I'm just saying. So once we meet with Tiffany, we look at the plan, we review it, see what's not working. We have to determine what it is that we want specifically. How many community farms, urban farms do we need? How many community gardens do we need? And where do we need to place them strategically? That's what we need to discuss after we meet with Tiffany, to identify or to see what we can do to modify the policy. That's how you do that. You got the cooperative extension that have seeds, and they have things for different community gardens that have access where people can come by and get food, produce, if they want to start growing. You have, like I said, again, these nonprofits who have monies and space, kitchen space, land space that's not owned by the city. Do they want to participate? You know how many churches we got in East Winston with all this land? That's not owned by the government. Do they want to participate in hydrating the food desert? Have we reached out to them? They right there. You can't help but ride past them. So my thing is, we got to take a comprehensive approach, because it ain't that hard. It's not. So we can talk and all this and wait and see.
No, I think we need to do action. I think talking about it does nothing, right?
And so I'm with it. I'm ready. I'm ready to be on that.
So I think there, and kind of as you said before, Brandon, we need a plan and we need data. So we need some of us to volunteer to collect and analyze the data.
Well,
right? We've got to collect it, right? Same thing at Liberty Street. We've talked about data collection, but someone's got to volunteer and say, I will write the questions and I will go out and ask people the questions. So the last thing I put in the chat, just because we're on time for our meeting, is I put the direct link to the urban agriculture kind of toolkit and description, the exact zonings from the city. This is what they're looking to revise. This is what they want our input on. This is what we need to have done our research on before the meeting with Tiffany White. This is it, right? So comb through one of the links I sent earlier, which is the urban agriculture ordinance. There's a good slideshow that gives a bit more information, but this specifically looks at kind of what are the standards, what are the regulations in terms of setbacks, in terms of numbers of parking spots, in terms of residential versus non-residential codes. We need to know this clearly and well before that Tiffany meeting, and so also from there, be able to say, here are the parts we want to make recommendations on or improvements on. But have it connected to the existing ordinance.
That's right. So Maggie, you up for it? You ready?
Of course. So if that link didn't work, I'll give you the direct link.
It's like an infograph, right? What is an urban garden? Step-by-step question and answers. Is that the one?
That's it, correct. There was a link I had sent previously that was the broader urban agriculture requirements for application process, all of that. And then
Yeah, I got it.
the last link
I was just talking about the
shows-
PDF. I got it. I figured out how to open it.
So I think there we need to be very clear and familiar with the ordinance, with the process, right? So again, that kind of urban agriculture link that was sent earlier walks through the 5 specific steps in that application process. So are those cumbersome or inaccessible steps? Are those not the right steps? Are things like knowing your tax block, knowing your parcel identification number, are those things that could be limiting to individuals in being able to do the permit? Certainly in terms of special use permits, when we've evaluated some of these before, they're difficult, they're tedious. Sometimes you got to buy an architectural ruler, things like that. So I think if we have some pretty clear, fleshed out bullet points of recommendations, areas to improve ahead of the meeting with Tiffany, that will be a more beneficial meeting.
Would you be willing to put that bullet point list together, perhaps in a Google Doc and share it, or whichever way you'd like to do that?
Yeah, I mean, who wants to get that started? I think there's a lot of energy and passion around it. Brandon, would you want to start that Google Doc and share it with us? The bullets of the areas that we identify that need to be improved in the urban agriculture permit?
Yes, I need to look at the permit, and I need to talk. To me, in order for me to be efficient in that, I would need to talk with somebody who helped, like what, for example, I use Banner, for example. By him being, I need to know what we need to I need to look at the plan before I put together a bullet list now. Because I haven't
not now. That's why I sent out those links. So
yeah, I do it. I do it. I started.
I mean, I think all of us should, right? But if one person is willing to volunteer to spearhead starting that Google Doc or the way that we start organizing and analyzing it, I know I've read the permit a number of times, and there are certain areas that, again, to me are pretty tedious or big hurdles for individuals. But we've got to have a clear sense of what the committee wants to ask to be improved. Yes, Shalonda.
I need to learn I need to read it. And so I'm willing to help Brandon with that, because I definitely want to be well-versed before I meet anybody. So if that's okay, I'd like to work with you, Brandon, on the Google document and understanding the foundations.
Yes, it's okay. I'm open to it.
And I just want to say, and I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but just know that if it's the official business of the council, that it's under requirement that the council also includes the city liaison. So just when you create these documents, or if there's email correspondence on projects like this, just please CC or share with me as well, so that I am in the loop. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so moving forward, just out of respect of time, and I think we're about to lose quorum. The last couple of things on our agenda, I have started the annual report. I'm going to share a link to folks to give comments or add some items. So I've been working on our 2021 annual report that we typically send over to marketing to make it look glossy. And then we present it to a subcommittee at the city. So I'm excited for everyone's kind of feedback, but also some things I might have forgotten to include. And then the last last 2 items of new business was if anyone wanted to talk about the Liberty Street Market. I know we talked about data collection. I'm not sure where that has moved forward.
that's one thing I was curious to know, because I know this is what I was asking. I know we just had a discussion about this a while ago, Megan. Since the Urban Liberty Street Market has been in operation these past couple of weeks, do we have any type of aggregate data that we can assess?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Brandon, that was your idea, and it's a great idea. So I think that means it's kind of I think every time we've talked about it, it's been asking you what's the plan? How are you going to collect it? Do you need the rest of the council's help?
Yeah, you remember I asked you I asked you were you gonna help me do it, and you was like, yeah, and I said if you sign on to do it, then I do it. And so I ain't really heard nothing back from you. So I ain't trying to put you on the spot, but that's why
No, I don't mind being on the spot, and I'm happy to kind of go back and look through the minutes. Because I remember that I said I was happy to help you when you were leading it, and I asked questions about, are we going to write a survey instrument? What questions, things like that. So maybe we were
I said, Megan, if you participate, I'll lead it. That was my I said,
That's
if you
right.
join,
Yeah.
I said, I'll lead it. You remember me saying that?
Absolutely. So yeah, let me know how you're leading it, and I'm happy to support it. Yeah, I think that's it. We remember the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So let me know, if you've got a plan and you need support, if you need someone to help hand out a survey or ask the questions, I definitely want to be part of that. I still want to do that. I had just been kind of waiting, I said, more on, did you have a sense of what the questions were or how you wanted to collect that data?
Right. Now, let me ask you a question. And I'm listening to what you're saying. My question is, since the Liberty Street Market has been open, what type of data has been collected? Because I'm sure it hadn't just been open without no type of data collection. So that's what I'm saying. What do we have thus far so we can review it?
The first summer that we ran it, the data I collected.
I'm talking about now. This currency.
It has stalled at you were going to lead it, and I offered to support it.
No, I don't think you understand what I'm asking you. Since the Liberty Street Market has been open, has any data been collected at all? That's what I'm asking.
Like what type of data? Our council
any data,
has
anything, attendance, sales, feedback from customers, just any type of data, demographics, anything.
Let me add on right quick if I can. Now I will say, I've been pretty regular whether I'm selling food or just attending. If nothing else, we have qualitative data that we've collected at the Urban Liberty Street Market. I think that's worth something. But in the midst of everything, I remember our last conversations was going to build a subcommittee for Liberty Street Market, and we was looking at voting on building a subcommittee for resiliency. So that's the last places we've been. I think attendance fell off after that. I think that was maybe in February, March. So I think that needs to be brought back up, whether we're going to create these subcommittees or not. And then in asking all that, my question is, what is success? What does success look like at the Liberty Street Market? Because we might be looking at different things as determining success. Are we trying to put the farmers or the growers on, making sure they have low barriers to sell? Are we trying to stick to our the 5-mile radius that we stuck with in the beginning? Are we using these as impetus to really start building the conversation about this water access or land access? The money situation, the food stamps, EBT, like it's I think it's a few things that we need to figure out what is success in that space. What I mean?
So just in the essence of time, and because we do not have quorum right now, if you look at the March minutes at 6:32 p.m., the council voted to approve the formation of a subcommittee. We did not have quorum and therefore haven't had an official business meeting since. So basically we as a council formed a subcommittee, but we did not elect members to it because we said next meeting we will basically say if we're interested in being on the subcommittee or not. This has been our first official business meeting since.
So what you're saying is we don't have any tangible, measurable data on what's been going on at the Liberty Street Market this session.
Our council has not collected data since the summer that we ran the market, summer 2020. I don't know if the city is collecting data, but our council has not had an official role, nor have we collected data at the market last summer when the city operated it, nor this season so far.
So you're saying the city may have data, but I'm saying, is there any data, period? I don't care who, if the birds flying around got it. I'm just saying, is there something we can look at?
I got data. Qualitative data. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, it's not rocket science in my mind. This is pretty simple because it hadn't been really stimulated. So until we get some activity, firstly from our board, you know what I mean? Everybody got to pitch in. You know what I mean? Like, I already know the Liberty Street Market to bounce back. I'm not worried about that. But I think, like, to me, this is just my personal opinion. I think the data is pretty much a mute discussion right now until we actually formally engage our subcommittee. I mean, what is the data going to tell us moving forward?
It can tell you how many people, how many vendors been there. It can tell you how many participants we have. We can get an idea of.
But we already know that. That's why I said I already know that. Anybody who's been up there knows that. I can name every vendor. You know what I'm saying? You can go to the vendors and ask them how much they made, when they made money, when they didn't make money, like all that's there. But this can come out once we formally engage our subcommittee. And my thing is, I feel like we've been slacking on this council. Like, we got the council in place, we're coming with the issues, but as far as working in consensus to make something happen, I don't see that. You know what I mean? Until we start building some type of rapport amongst each other, it don't matter what data we got. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna be pulling in all types of different directions. So I'm awaiting your leadership on this Liberty Street Market. I'm awaiting to get quorum so we can vote on this resiliency committee, because us urban farmers are not going to be able to operate in a vacuum. It's going to take some type of support on the other end to make everything move.
All right, so I think in that regard, we know that on our July agenda, we will put as our first item of new business, electing members to the Liberty Street Market Subcommittee. And we will also put as a new agenda item the review of the current urban agriculture permit process and regulations, in which we will review those items identified on the Google document. We will also include as an item of old business the food deserts, and we'll add Shalanda's name to that topic. And in between, I think we all know the work we signed up to do. Just out of respect of time, because we only have a minute left. Yeah.
Let's do it, council. We've been talking, like Brandon said, we've been talking long enough. You know, I really respect our leadership. Appreciate you, Megan. Let's get it.
That's right. I can't do it all. You know, right. I can't, all of us need to kind of make sure we're all doing it and not just pitching ideas, but that we work the plan to bring our ideas to fruition, you know.
I'd like to really salute Mariah, because she's really been, you know, regardless of what the Liberty Street Market looked like, I feel her heart and I feel her energy there. So let's work to be successful. Somebody told me a long time ago, like, it's easy to be unsuccessful. We could be 100% successful in being unsuccessful by looking at things to critique or our failings. That's easy. We say, yeah, I was right. That's why we failed. Yeah, I was right. That's 100% successful. So let's challenge ourselves to really support each other and build this resiliency. I trust everybody on this call.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everyone. You know, I think it's important that we put where we're at out there, you know. So yeah, I welcome that. And so because we had a few meetings where we didn't meet quorum, whereas in past years, we haven't had a July meeting. I feel it's important that we have a July meeting because we've already missed a number of months. We talked about what we want on the agenda. Should there be anything else you want to add, please reach out. And in between, like I said, you can expect to see the draft of the annual report from me, as well as following up on emailing about getting that permit data. Brandon, reach out if you want to support or help on working through how we get more data from Liberty Street, as well as I think Shalonda and Brandon talked about the Google Doc towards getting ready for the meeting with Tiffany White that Mariah is going to try to coordinate for us.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah. Hey, thank you to you all, to everyone. I think there was a lot of passion, but there was also a lot of action items to move forward that emerged this month. So that's good. We got to leave our meetings with that to make sure we do the work in between. So I look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Absolutely. And welcome, Shalonda. Thank you for joining us.
Shalonda, what's a good way to get in contact with you so we can go ahead and start getting this ball rolling?
Oh, let me give you my contact information in the chat real quick.
Yeah,
or Facebook is also. I'm young to do Facebook, Megan, right?
Let me pull up my.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat. But I'm also a big text message person. Like text messages, like I pay attention to my text, and so I'll put my number there. And my office is right here downtown, so I'm available to find out and see, because I live in Southeast Winston, so I need to be more familiar with what Michael's talking about and with the area that you're talking about. Even though I work in Boston Thurman, we just still are virtual most of the time. So I still need to actually physically see the locations that I'm at and that we're speaking of. And I did plan on coming to the farmers market, Michael, on Friday, tomorrow from 4 to 6. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was my assignment last week, but yeah, I'll be coming tomorrow.
All right, take care, y'all. See you soon.
Thank you all. Bye. Have a good evening.
Good evening.